Welcome, everybody, to the Veterans Voice Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jones, and we are here live in the Sober Life Studios, and this is brought to you by One Brother, One Sister. One Brother, One Sister is dedicated to bringing training, education, and services to first responders and veterans at no cost to them. We do this all through your donations. So please, if you have a moment, go to onebrother1sister.com, make a donation, and help us continue our mission to help the people who help us and be of service to those who have been of service to us. And don't forget, hey, like the podcast, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and definitely thank a first responder or a veteran today. When you see one today, take a moment and thank them for their service. We come to you, sometimes we're live, sometimes you might be catching the recording, but your comments are still important. Put your comments in, whether you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, put your comments in because we read all of those and it helps us to answer the questions that you have. Or if you've got somebody who you think would be a good guest for the Veterans Voice Podcast, please let us know. I have a great guest. This is a gentleman. I haven't known you that long. I mean, we met last year sometime, or
maybe 6 months ago.
6 months ago, whatever it was. But you were at one of our trainings, and we were working with the Haven at the moment, and you were there. This is John Schrey, and John, you are representing the Haven. Is it Haven for Heroes?
Yeah, Haven Health Management and the Veteran First Responder Programs, Haven for Heroes.
Okay, all right. And you do this obviously because you've got some experience with addiction yourself, right?
Yeah, 100%. yeah. It's putting it lightly.
Some real experience.
For sure.
Well, let's start first of all. You served in our U.S. military. Thank you for your service. U.S. Marines. Yep. How long were you a Marine?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years, yeah.
Okay, terrific. Is that something, you wanted to do, always wanted to do, or how did that come about for you?
No. I played a lot of sports growing up, so in high school, a recruiter would call me, and I would literally hang up on him. I had no intention of being in the military.
Were you expecting like professional sports? Is that what was in your head?
I mean, a little bit. I don't know. I don't think I ever looked that far down the road.
Okay.
I think that was more the issue. I was, I went away for instance, I went to school, Florida State, strictly because it was my favorite football team and they partied. It was like the number one rated party school. I think that was my main focus.
Well, so you played football in college?
And I didn't. No. I like the football team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
I read into that. Okay.
Yeah. No, I liked the team growing up, and then it ended up being the number one party school in the country that year that I was getting out, and it was that's lit. I really wasn't thinking too far down the road.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Well, so you did go to college though?
I went to college twice. I've been to college a plethora of times.
Right.
I have a 2-year degree. About 210 credits and a 2-year degree.
It took me 18 years to get 2 years degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your purpose then? I know you're thinking party school and everything else, but did you have an idea about what you wanted to do?
Nothing.
I
honestly didn't. I mean, I think I wanted to be like an FBI agent at one point, but I was getting in trouble, so like I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like I was. It's funny. I don't really know what my thought process was back then. I joined the military at 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
that's actually a little later than most people.
100. Yeah. Very, very late. And I paid for it in boot camp.
You felt like the old man?
I felt like the old man, and they told me, I'd have the drill instructors whispering in my ear, like, "Hey, Schrey, you think you're older than us? Like, you think you're bad?" And I'm like, "Time out, I don't." And like, let's keep it moving. But yeah, I joined at 25 because my life was kind of, I guess, because I had no real dreams or aspirations. I was just kind of going with the flow. I always did very well in school. Things came easy to me, and so I think that's part of why I never really had to work for anything. And I ended up at 25 with like sleeping on a couch.
Did you go through Parris Island?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's where my son went.
Yeah.
And at 25, wow.
It was something.
Now, you also have you had an addiction problem back then. Did that start before, after, during? How did that come about for you?
No, that was before. I think a big part of the reason I joined the Marine Corps, was I was in trouble with the law. Nothing real serious, but I had some drug charges, and I was strung out. This is the early 2000s in South Florida when the pills were like a dime a dozen. They were everywhere, and I got caught up in that. And,
okay.
So I joined the Marine Corps really because, again, I'm fairly intelligent, and I knew the jig was up. It was like, and my buddy had a little brother. This is the story. He had a little brother who was just getting out of the Marine Corps, and we had this on a whim. It was like, hey, man, I think we both knew we were screwed. It's like, I'll do it if you do it. And within 4 months, 3-4 months, I was out to boot camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you say you got involved? This was back in the days of the pill mills
Yep.
and all the things going on in the early 2000s. What was that like culturally? I mean, people might not understand who didn't go through it or weren't living here. Was that something that affected everyone? I mean, was it like this prevalent idea of pills are everywhere? What was going on then?
I only grew up here, right? You know what I mean? But I think for us, it was like pills were like maybe other parts of the country smoking weed.
Oh,
okay. I think it was just, they were everywhere. If you had insurance, you could get, these 30 milligram Roxys that will cost another guy $30 up in New York. You could get them for cents on the dollar.
Wow.
And that's how we were out of control. Before I knew it, you're hooked, you're physically addicted to them. And then you're just off to the races.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how early was that start for you with that kind of addictive behavior?
Addictive behavior way back, but with the pills and everything, probably 22 years old,
Oh, okay.
Like 2003, again, I went away to school. I drank, I did coke for the first, I did all the, the typical kind of leveling up in the drugs. And, but what really got me is I had gotten to a big fight and I had broke my jaw. And my jaw was wired shut. They gave me a bunch of opiates, and that's kind of what started the spiral.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Before then, it wasn't anything really serious.
No, just a lot of drinking, a lot of a little like ecstasy back then, and some of these different things. But again, was very common where I grew up. I grew up in Boca Raton, Florida. People have money.
That's a lot of those places where. If the pill mills weren't there, the people who owned them lived in Boca.
Correct.
And that was kind of like the hub.
Yeah.
Even though you saw them up in Palm Beach and down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami especially. Was your family concerned about you? Did they have any knowledge of what was going on with you?
Oh yeah. They tried to get me help. My dad would beg me to join the Air Force. He'd beg me to join one of the branches of the military. And I think that's also what kind of pushed me into when my buddy and I made that decision, like, let's join the Marine Corps. It's like my family been wanting me to go into the service, and they were not happy when I joined the Marine Corps. We were in the middle of 2 wars. They were not a fan of.
What they want you to join the Postal Service? What were they looking at?
They wanted me to join like Coast Guard, Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Some of the where I wouldn't be, quite as
first
involved
ones
as
in
I ended
kind
up
of thing.
being involved. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's not the kind of. And nothing against the other services. I've learned that all the branches have badasses in them.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But the Marine Corps, like, if I was going to do it, I had to do it all. I had to go all the way in, and so that's why I think we chose the Marine Corps.
Yeah, my son always told me it was like you're kind of at the top of the ladder there with the Marine Corps as far as badassery, if you will.
Yeah.
But then again, each service has their specific role and purpose.
For sure.
And none of them can function without the other ones in some capacity.
100%. But I like that we break.
There was
balls.
still rivalry, though, right?
Oh, and still are. Every time I see an Army guy, they're like, "Oh, you got a pack of crayon? You eating crayon? Or something?" I said, "No, I already had breakfast." And it's a back and forth. But
gotcha.
But there's love. I think I've been to combat a couple of times, and I've served with Army guys. I had Air Force, guys attached to us. So when you really see what everyone does and like you work as a unit, like you have the utmost respect for everybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. When you're getting air support, when you're even getting transported on a Navy ship, there's things that are important. So you go into the military. How did you cope with, the beginnings of your addiction and then going into the military? Because those two things do not go hand in hand very well.
No.
Especially at the beginning of your service because of Harris Island and things like that.
Truth be told, I used a synthetic urine to get in. to get into.
Really?
Yeah, when I went to Paris Island, I used synthetic urine, and I kicked the pills.
See, it's not just for getting out of police problems.
Right? No,
you can use that for many things.
And I had used that for probation in the past. I knew which one worked best, and but I really wanted to change. You know what I mean? Like I needed to do this, and so I was willing to do anything. And I knew I would feel like shit in boot camp, and I did. But it was the best. I've kicked opiates plenty of times, and everyone's like, I can't believe you did that in boot camp. And it's like, but when you're you're moving, and you don't know if it's day or night for the first few days. Like your whole head's spinning, and
it's not like any of your thoughts or your world really comes into that.
Right.
They think for you. They tell you everything is regimented.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the only successful ways to do it on your own is through a service.
100%. It's the only way I ever found to be able to do it on my own. And then, the Marine Corps is, a proponent for drinking. I mean, drinking is okay. Is okay as long as you show up to work in the morning,
right.
And it's almost a badge of courage to, be up till 2-3 in the morning. As long as you're out there at 5:30, ready to run, and you run, everything, there's no questions asked.
Right.
So that was something. I drank quite a bit, but also the Marine Corps gave me purpose, and I didn't know it at the time, but that kept me afloat. That kept the drugs at bay. That kept me, when I found a purpose in my life, like I told you, I didn't really have one, especially when I started to deploy and have Marines under me. And there was no way that was number one. That was the only thing that's ever superseded, getting.
Is that what you're talking about when you said you went in because you had to change? You knew you had to do something different. Was it about finding purpose?
I think it was, but without knowing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think
it wasn't a very clear.
It was no conscious decision. Like I need a purpose in my life. It was just like I knew. Look, I have a brother he's passed away since, but he was in and out of prison my whole life. He was 15 years older than me, so I saw from a young age, where my life was going. You know what I mean?
So your family already had.
Yeah,
something that they've looked. Oh wow!
My other brother. Shout out to Scott. He just celebrated 18 years sober. Yeah, so
excellent.
So but there was him. At that time he was using as well. But he wasn't doing the prison kind of like in and out. But my other brother was.
How did your family handle all of this? I mean, my God, it must have been horrible for them.
Yeah, my father has severe PTSD. He does. He's in his 80s now, but he has seen it all, been through it all. My mother's dealt with it quite a bit better. She's a little younger than him as well, and she's bounced back well. But it was tough. It was tough on everybody. It's the disease of addiction is, I mean, it touches far beyond the addict. But
now, understanding that you went into the military now because you're kind of floundering and you need direction, and was there also a part of you? Was there anything conscious about I want to serve my country as well? Was that a part of it?
Oh, I mean, 100%.
Okay.
We're 2006. Right. I mean, we're at war with two countries. I'm a huge. I love America. Like I love real down. I'm not happy with a lot of things that are going on now, but 100%. I mean, again, that's why I joined the Marine Corps, because I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to the best of my. I'm going to do the best, and the best the country has to offer, as far as I'm concerned now, and is the Marine Corps.
Absolutely.
But it was there was definitely
definite
I love this. I can't say it enough. And I don't think I say it enough, how much we love this country. Like the actual,
I don't think enough people say it enough.
Yeah.
And instead of this, obviously, you're right. Politically and all the stuff going on, it's really frustrating because there's so much, people are spending so much time throwing mud at each other. Nobody's really thinking about what do Americans need? And we don't talk about that. So thank God for the service that you provide and that you've provided for us and others. And all. So how did that happen, or how did that work for you? Now you're in the military, you've got alcohol to kind of quell the other problems, and you're starting to build your character and who you are. How did that work for you for those 8 years?
Well, so I think alcoholics and drug addicts are when they put their mind to the right thing, they're some of the most intelligent, they're some of the most hardest working, disciplined. Just
the dumb ones don't survive.
Right.
You gotta,
Right. I agree. And so that's what happened when I hit the Marine Corps. I found that purpose. I deployed. So I joined 2006. I deployed 2008, my first deployment. I was a combat engineer. So I got thrust into, the front of the I was sweeping for IEDs. That's what I did. Wow. So in 2008, we went over to Helmand Province, a town called Nowzat in Afghanistan. And I was sweeping for IEDs, and my life completely changed. My thought process. I never really thought about life or death. It was just, I had great parents. I lived in Boca Raton, Florida. Everything that I did, I fucked up. Excuse me, can I curse?
Mm-hmm.
I did it on my own.
It's all good.
I did it all on my own, and then for the first time, being over there, like life wasn't guaranteed for me, yeah. And that was a shock, but again, when that first bullet flies over your head,
big and bad doesn't matter anymore.
Big and bad doesn't matter. And the training kicks in,
Right.
I think that's, the mindset shifts immediately. And I think that's a big part of the problem coming out. Right. And the problems why for a lot of us is that switch that we switch on for life, or, when we're in combat, gets broken and we can't switch it back off. But yeah, I would get liquor sent to me in Listerine bottles when I was overseas, and I learned that from my senior guys.
Listerine didn't have enough alcohol in it for you?
No, yeah, exactly.
It was already bad enough.
A whole lot easier. There were some other things that we were able to get over there, but only when we were back. Like the mission took priority. And not just me, when we all were like, I knew a lot of guys in the Marine Corps that were there because they didn't know what they were doing with their life,
Yeah.
But boy, when that first deployment, I found my calling, man. I found my purpose. I found everything I ever wanted in life was being a Marine, being with my guys. We lost one of my best friends. We lost had a lot of bad things happened in 2008, sure. And now it's at Helmand. And that was, so it's hard to say I'd go back and do it again. People always ask, would you do it again? I mean, I say we, because I know we all stand on the same. I would do it in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, it came with loss. And it came with a mindset that really took a toll on me. It takes a toll on us down the road.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, when you're on the outside before you go in, it's easy to pretend, hey, I'm invincible. It doesn't matter. Everything's cool.
Right.
Tomorrow, don't even have to think about it. And then it's like you're just minute to minute sometimes when you're over there in those situations. And so I've talked to people and they've told me. And I'm glad you came out okay. I'm sorry for the losses that you suffered. And of course, we should all be sorry for those losses. You made your way to sergeant.
Yep.
And was 8 years the plan? Was it a one re-up and then done after that? How did that work out for you there?
No, the plan was 4 years. Again, no real plan, but I didn't
the
think
idea,
past the next. So I did my set. So I got married in the 4 years to someone I had known for years back in Florida, who had seen me through my rough stages leading up to joining in the first place, knew me, knew who I was to my core. And I ran into her when I was back from my first deployment. And we, within 9 months, were married. So I was going on my second deployment at that point. I had, so now I had a wife. And I had to extend because I was going to go over my date, my EAS date. And so I extended to go on our second deployment because at this point I have Marines under me, which there was no way I wasn't going and leaving them, it's going to go stay behind while they went.
Yeah.
It just, if something happened to them, there's no way I would have made it. I would have taken, I couldn't handle that. So my wife and I said, okay, let's extend. And let's see where it goes, So I extended for 6 months or whatever they ask you to do. And I went over there, and when I was over there, I received a combat meritorious to sergeant. and so I called my wife and I said, let's re-enlist, you know. And so I re-enlisted in Afghanistan in 2010. At the height of like my, you know, love in the Marine Corps. Again, I had the squad. I had these guys, this guy, you know, like I still talk to them, Richardson and Monty, and these guys that I love them. Like I couldn't love a human more than I love these guys, you know. And we all came home together on that deployment. The problem is I got hit with a couple IEDs. So right after I re-enlisted, I got hit with these IEDs. They tell me I'm non-deploy, like I wouldn't be able to deploy anymore. So now I'm signed up for another 4 years, but I can't deploy.
Wow.
So when I come home, they gave me some options. And so my wife and I decided to get as close to Florida as we could, which was South Carolina, back to Parris Island. So I worked down at Weapons Battalion on the rifle range for my second 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's when shit started kind of going downhill.
Those injuries, still dealing with any of that today, or?
Yeah, I have some pretty bad. You know, I need to have neck surgery. I'm trying to hold off as long as I can. Wow. Which I think was, you know, it was the IED blast as well as, you know, just having all the gear. It's just like a whole like plethora of things that happened. And then the concussions, definitely like. I think are starting to maybe. I need to get another scan because sometimes I don't feel like I'm able to finish my sentences, and who knows? You know, hopefully it's not a big deal down the road. But
hey, could just be getting old.
Yeah, that's it too. Yeah, definitely. My eyes are going. You know, here we go. I'm 42. So, but I don't listen. I got all my hands and my toes. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. The reason I ask is only because sometimes people assume that you see somebody and you wouldn't make an assumption that you were injured. But there's a lot of injuries that you guys carry that besides trauma.
Sure.
The actual physical injuries that people don't recognize that you guys have. And that you come home with problems with that kind of stuff. So tell me about, you know, your decision to leave. And at this point, has John started to make plans now at the end of your 8 years? I mean, or is it going back to whatever's going to happen is going to happen?
It's funny, man. It was more about survival. I had a lot of issues going on, and I was like hiding with alcohol. I started taking pills again when I was in the Marine Corps. My prescribed, which allowed me to take more than just prescribed. You know what I mean? As long as the drug test would show the same substance, you know, I could double up.
Gotcha.
You know, they prescribed me Adderall. I'm on all, you know, just mass amounts of Adderall. Right. And then, you know, pain meds, you know, psychotic, you know, SSNRIs, you know, for the PTSD. But now to me, right, having done the work now, I got Afghanistan, and those injuries gave me a lot of excuses to drink and drug. Sure. You know, it gave me a lot of like, hey, don't fuck with me. I got PTSD, you know, they diagnosed me with all this stuff. And I'm not really proud to even say that, right? Because a lot of people really struggle, and I did struggle, but I definitely used it to my advantage to kind of, you know, for my drug addiction, really.
Well, it actually happens in a lot of cases where if you fall into either bad behavior or addiction or something of that nature, then it becomes the fuel for that addiction. Sure. And even with depression and anxiety and the other things that might go on, it becomes the fuel for those things. And so everybody does use them to a certain extent. But you're walking out now and you've got these things going on with you. Where's John going to go? And were you thinking at any point during any of this, I got to change my ways?
Yeah. 100%. So towards the end of my second enlistment, my wife gets pregnant. We had to fight like hell to even get her pregnant, doing IVF and some other, you know, we tried for a couple years. And I'm hiding all this, you know, the pills and everything from my wife and family.
She didn't know.
I mean, I wasn't.
But she knew you were drinking.
She knew I was drinking. Yeah. She was cool with that. She knew I partied on the weekends. Or, you know, she knew that, but she didn't know the extent or what was going on inside, really.
Right. Gotcha.
You know, and especially when she got pregnant, it was all about, you know, making sure that they're okay, you know, and making sure that she's okay. And she had a rough kind of pregnancy towards the end as well. And I always had these lines in the sand. It was like, I mean, I can remember it clear as day when I see the first sonogram. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop doing all this shit. You know, these like lines in the sand.
I got to get responsible now. It's time to be a dad,
and I'm getting out soon, and I gotta, I can't get out with this raging problem because I've been there, done that, and we know how that ends. So there was another one. I don't want to get too much into it, but so my wife was pregnant with twins, right? And so at 22 weeks, the boy in the sonogram, his heart stopped beating, right? So she had to carry that baby to term along with my daughter, who's a healthy, beautiful little 10-year-old now. But
nice.
And so, but those were all more excuses. Oh, well, now I can't stop now because it's just the excuses, reasons, whatever you want to call them. They just kept me going. And it's, I know now, right? I work in this field now. I know what was going on, but it was like, I couldn't stop.
It made sense at the time.
100%. And
because look at what we're working with, a broken idea to begin with.
Correct.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's why when I hear people, that someone wants to leave treatment earlier, and they call me to talk to them. And I'm like, look, I know you believe that, like I got to go be a dad. I got to go, I'm like, I know you believe that, but, and you don't know me, but I'm telling you, that is not what's really going to happen. You know what I mean?
What a great point you make, because not many people actually approach it that way. They're like, well, they're just wrong.
Right.
But if they truly believe it's to be right, then wrong has nothing to do with it.
Correct.
It's about, how do I reach this person so I can get them to see a different perspective? Because you understand, when you're looking at it from where they are, that is their truth.
That is 100%, and I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me, we'll fast forward, but with treatment, is when I realized that, so when I got out, I went down a terrible path. We bought a house back in Delray, and that was the most. And it's hard for me to say because my wife hears this and she knows that by now. But like the hardest thing ever was walking into that house with this beautiful wife and this little baby girl, and like my mind is like going 100 million miles an hour, and this is supposed to be this safe, beautiful space. And I felt so unsafe, right? I felt so out of place. Like I could not go into my house without, finding the right upper and downer to get me through the day.
It was like a crushing responsibility crashing down on you. It's the whole new thing.
Right. And also being so numb from, whether it is from when you're in combat and you turn off that light for, what I mean? If someone dies, you got to keep it moving, and you don't have, you can't feel emotion. You have to be a robot. There's that mentality that still kind of lingers. There's the VA giving you all the subs, the SSNRIs to numb you so you don't, go crazy, but you also don't get to feel joy. Then there's the heroin, whatever the substance is, the alcohol. And so I was but I had a lot of shame that I didn't feel love, right? Like I didn't feel good about it. So like the one thing that was getting through was the shame, which to your point, continued the addiction, just made the addiction worse.
Absolutely. I could see that. Now, I want to move past the military into your new life, but I want to ask one question.
Yeah.
Experiencing what you experienced,
mm-hmm.
Do you feel that the military needs to put a little more time, all military, all first responders, even with the military, should put more time into educating people who can look out for each other? You guys got each other's back in a firefight, but nobody's got your back when you're popping pills in your cot and doing things like that. Do you think there's some way we can train people so that we can have people looking out for each other and not letting them fall down the rabbit hole of addiction?
Yeah, I think it's why I'm so loud about what I've been through. I think we have to, we have I'll speak for myself. I have an obligation, I shouldn't be here. My two best friends that went on both deployments taken their lives, right? My two closest, Marines have taken their lives since I've been sober, and so, but I think, and then you go into the suicide tough, and I don't know if I hope I'm not jumping around here, but
no, it's fun.
Like these were two of the toughest. You can ask anyone in my battalion. These are two of the toughest motherfuckers that I've ever been around, let alone deployed with and everything else, right? And they took their lives. And I think because they didn't see there was another way out, I think they did what they thought they had to do. And but to your point, I think it takes like us, like myself, to like tell them there is another way out, that there is more to this. I think, definitely the military, when you get out of the military and you do 13 weeks of boot camp. Some of the other ones are 8 or 9, whatever the case may be. But we did 13 weeks of boot camp. I did about a week and a half course when I got out, right? Taught me how to write a fucking check. Taught me how to dial the 1-800 suicide hotline if I have an issue. It showed me how to get my disability, right? Like to get my disability check, which, mind you, I was shooting that whole check in my arm, right?
So after 8 years of service, 1 week of preparedness for the world.
Yeah. And I think,
wow.
And again, I hate disparaging anything that I love it, right? But
no, they need improvement. Everything can be improved.
And I have been trying to reach out, and I actually have something really cool coming up in November where, maybe that'll be a little inroad. But I think that 2-week course, if it were a 4-week course, and you talked about other things like, hey, what's your like purpose? I never heard the word fucking purpose in the 8 years in the Marine Corps.
Right.
I was living it, but I didn't know what it was.
Because they told you what your purpose was. Beyond that, it didn't matter.
Well, and I just started
for
living
their
it.
For
but
their
if someone
needs.
had said, like, what's your purpose? I'd say my men, right? And my God, getting us. But so what's your purpose going to be when you get out? Oh, fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That never even came to anyone's, thought process.
Yeah. And again, I am not disparaging.
Yeah.
Any of what I'm saying is,
you're absolutely right.
We can improve.
100.
We can improve.
Yeah.
And maybe the acceptance of the drinking and the things like that, maybe we need to start changing that a little bit and being a little more responsible with those things. I don't know for sure.
No,
But what definitely needs to happen is they need to make sure people are really okay. Just checking the box and self-reporting on the way out the door is not good enough. There should be evaluations and things done, I think.
Well, because we've been taught that whole time is like, keep your mouth, like you don't ever want to be, you don't want to be the guy who has to go to medical, like, so if you got something wrong with you, you don't say shit. You know what I mean? So it's a whole culture of that, which I get that. And I'm not saying that's wrong for those certain, if you got a sprained ankle, you don't want shoulder.
You don't want to be pulled away from your buds.
Right.
You don't want to be pulled away from your unit because you need to talk about a hard time, or you need to talk. And that's where PTSD really takes root, because if I talk about it, they're going to pull me, and I don't want to get pulled.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So beyond the military, and once again, thank you for your service.
Of course.
And I'm sorry about, what happened to you, but you get out. Now you're saying you guys bought this house. Were you like lost when you got out? Did you have, because now you still got your addiction, and now you've got, you got the pills and you got the booze, and now you got responsibility. What did that feel like for you, not having that purpose that you were looking for? Or maybe having the purpose of taking care of his family, but having no idea how to do it.
No idea how to do it. It was fucked up from the beginning because when my daughter was born, it was all about like, get rid of my wife had the other child, get that out of the way, put the daughter to my wife's chest. And then I was also intoxicated. I wasn't sober. And so then I starting to feel like shit. It was like, I got to get out of here and get more pills, and get back. And so, and I'm also not able to feel emotions. My emotions are all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it was screwed from the beginning. And so when we got home, it was just, again, it was like a survival thing. It was like, just get through. I did get a job. My buddy got me a job. It was a perfect job because it was like a merchandiser for a liquor company. Right. and it's not like I'm home. Yeah. But it's not, and even I wasn't able to get like free booze or anything, but it was like I was driving around, so I could just drive around. And at this point I'm doing heavier drugs. And so I can stop by this guy's house and get this in this town, and I was driving, I had like an hour and a half. I would be driving and I was on my own, just stacking bottles. I mean, smoking crack, stacking bottles, going to the next place, and just doing whatever I could. The cocaine, the uppers made me feel a little bit alive. The heroin, whether it was pills or heroin at that time was starting to, was calming my mind and making me just at least be able to take a deep breath, and I tell you, like I said, my other two boys took their lives. Drugs and alcohol kept me alive, I think, for a long period there. when I probably would have, if I didn't have that, because it was a solution to what was going on in my mind for a long time. The problem is that it doesn't last, and it always comes back.
You obviously had an awareness that what you're doing wasn't right.
Well, yeah.
And, that you were hiding and doing all that. But, what was it that finally put you in that position where I really have to do something now?
Yeah. So, I mean, so from the span of 2016 to 2000, let's say 19 when I got sober. I got sober for a period in 18 as well, but just to in those that 5 years, 2015 to 2019.
Yeah.
In that span, 12 different treatment facilities.
No way.
Yeah. Through the VA, double digit in psych, Baker Acts. At the VA, West Palm in Miami, South Carolina when I tried to, get up there and get sober, Texas.
Wow.
Just, homelessness, Overtown, Pompano, Boynton Beach was like my kind of 3 places I would live behind buildings. And I left my house because I didn't want to be involved. I knew I wasn't going to get sober. I knew I wasn't going to get my shit together. It was too far gone. And I had to let these 2 beautiful souls, my wife and my daughter, like be free of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was okay. That was okay for me. And then I had this realization, man, and this is where it gets, I was out in Texas. They'd sent me to some nonprofit. And I stayed sober for a little bit in 2018, went right back to it. And I remember sitting in this abandoned building, and I just had this, they call it a spiritual experience in AA and NA. And, I don't get into what people's beliefs are or anything.
No.
I go to Alcoholics Anonymous and I go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings as well. But I do work 12-step program. And my first step experience, my spiritual experience was the fact that I was sitting there trying to get high and trying to find a vein. They were all collapsed. I had abscesses and I'd been there 100 times before. And I had a realization that this is it's not going to work, and that was a very scary spot to be. The drugs are no longer going to work anymore. And it wasn't like a voice in my head, but it was a thought. And then it was like, well.
And this was a new thought to you.
New thought.
Before it was always like, I'll make it work. It'll be all right.
The thought was always, as long as I could find a vein, I'll be okay, even for a minute.
Yeah. But at this point, you're saying this is screwed. There's no good thing.
Yeah. And I'm still alive. I used to wake up from overdoses pissed off,
Right. Yeah.
Wishing I didn't, because it was just the same, and you're dope sick because they hit you with Narcan. So your drugs are out of your system and now you're sick and you're in a hospital and you got to get the hell out of there to get high again. You know what I mean? But this wasn't the case. I had drugs in my pocket. I had and I was just trying to find a vein. And I said, or that thought said, this is never going to work again. And I begged and pleaded to get into another nonprofit. And they let me to the same nonprofit, this guy Cole. This guy's, and we just lost another. It's called Solstice Recovery, and we just lost another guy. I found out yesterday we've lost way more than we've, than have won.
We're not winning the battle yet.
No,
we're not even close.
But he got me in. He let me in. He said he gave me another shot on a scholarship, and I jumped right into the work. And what I found in that work was purpose. I started to find my purpose again. I went to, it was a nonprofit with just 12 guys. I found fellowship. Didn't really know. I knew the word fellowship. Didn't know the Marine Corps was the biggest fellowship I've ever had. Right. And I found purpose in the rooms, and I never looked back. But it all was spawned by that understanding that drugs and alcohol will no longer work for me.
Right. And that's, some people have that breaking point, that point where I had a similar circumstance in my, where I had a realization in a singular moment when I was never been more drunk in my life.
Right.
But for a moment, I sobered up in the back of a police car. And we drove past my house, and I was basically, I said, everything I know is gone. It's all done.
Crazy how that
it's
happens.
All
right?
done. And I was sober as a priest at that moment. I was just completely knew exactly what was going on. Saw shadows moving in the house. Those are my kids, my wife. They're all gone. And And we got to the police station. They opened the door, and I fell out.
Right,
so I was
right,
drunk
right
again.
back
I was
to
right
it.
back
Yeah,
there. But I had that moment, and that moment stuck with me. And I never looked at alcohol and drugs the same way again after I had that moment.
Yeah.
Which is, a blessing, right? That when I look at it, I'm like, there's nothing in it for me. I took everything I could from it.
Yeah.
It took everything it could from me.
Correct.
And it's done. It's done. So, you find yourself now starting over.
Yep.
Starting over. And pretty much from scratch. Was your wife still in the picture at that time and helping or supportive? Or was there anything going on there?
So in 2017, she decided I was living homeless in Overtown, mainly because the VA was right. West Palm Beach VA was there, and they put me in the Camilla's house, the shelter right around the corner from there, and expect me to walk through Skid Row to outpatient at the VA, right? But that's how I ended up in Miami.
Sure.
It's just and she finally was able to find me, and she I don't know how she found me, but she found me, and she said she wanted me to sign over custody of my kid. So she could move back to New York where she was from. And I don't think I've ever hesitated. I've ever signed something as quickly as that. I knew, again, I knew that I was not coming home, and I love them.
Yeah.
I love them. They're the number
you
2.
You love them enough to do the right thing.
And I just, boom, I signed it, and she moved back to be with her family in New York. I would have contact, very sporadically when I went out to Texas. I think I was told, like, you can't talk to your kid for 6 months or so, amount of time. I was okay with that. But my wife, she divorced me. She divorced me in 16 or 17. And, but she was always supportive. She said, you get your shit together. I want you to be with your kid. I want you to be a father. And that's one thing when I talk to families now is like, just don't give up. Give them some hope. You know what I mean? Like, you have every right.
What great? How great is that? Because most people, it's like, if I'm going to like draw a line, it's like, fuck you, you're done,
right?
And that's it, we're done.
No.
But to say you're done until,
and
then I'll be there for you, and we'll be there for you, and we'll help you, or at least you could be in our life. How great is that? That's
huge.
Like, I wish more people had somebody like that to do that for them.
I owe her everything, and she knows it. She and that was it. So 6 months, I would get a FaceTime, and actually, she called me finally, right? So I got out of that treatment. I had a trash bag full of clothes, and I got 1 week free at a halfway. I jumped right into moving, got a job with a moving company. Which I hate moving, right? I did all the things I wouldn't have done before. I stayed in halfway as long as they told me. I got the sponsor and all that, which I'd done before and half-assed it. Yeah. And my wife, so she started, at 6 months, I got to FaceTime my kid and, my daughter, who was 4 at this point, and almost 5. And at 9 months, which now she did, I will say this, she thought I had almost a year and a half, right? Because I had a slip and didn't tell her about it.
Okay.
But whatever. At 9 months, she called me and she said, look, because my daughter's a wild one. She's a lot,
Right.
She's like, you need to come up here and it's time for you to be a father to your kid. You're doing the right thing. Like, I need you to help me, co-parent this child. And I didn't have much money. I didn't have any. And, but my therapist, my sponsor, like, you may never get this call again, like you've been asked, this is what you've been waiting for. So it was the middle of winter in 2019, and I jumped on a plane, and I had nowhere to go. I got an Airbnb. I rented a room, and slowly but surely, man, I just started doing the next right thing. And I would have her every other, like on a Sunday, I'd have her for the day, my kid, and we'd hang out in this room, or I'd take, whatever, we would just go do it. I didn't have much money either. And then, a month later, it's like, okay, you have it for the weekend, right? She could sleep over. And it's just like that. And within, 6 months after, now I got like 2 years sober. We're completely co-parenting my child, and so she would be with me for a week, or we had a schedule set up, and I got to experience being a dad really for the first time, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was full of fear, just like before, but I knew that I just had to keep and I would ask for advice, and I kept going to my meetings. I found a home group up there, and these guys kind of like, like they do in these fellowships. You know, they put their arms around me and helped me through it. And then and so, you know, my wife had a boyfriend at the time too, which is something I never would have put up with. My ex-wife at the time had a boyfriend. You know, I had to be the alpha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, show them who the fuck I am. You know what I mean? And I didn't do that this time.
Those are hard steps.
Crazy.
Those are hard steps because you want to just, you know what? I don't want to be this wimpy. I don't want to be. I want to take control and yell and scream.
Yeah.
What held you in check? Was it your connection to the fellowship? Was it was there somebody specific, like a sponsor or somebody who really kind of guided you through that?
I mean,
because that's a lot of guys suffer with that.
I mean, there's the guy Cole Shiflett, the guy who got me into treatment. He's been like my big brother, you know, and he really is my big brother. You know, I have a big brother that's 18 years, and we have a great relationship. My other brother passed away, and this kind of guy at the same, like a year later, stepped into that role, and I trust him with my life, you know, and he was one of the guys who just, you know, kept saying do the right thing, and I knew what the right thing was, right? Because I do know at this point, like, there's some clarity there, you know, and I'm like, I knew that being a tough guy was a bunch of bullshit. That it was really just a scared, you know, it's really just like, you know, it's fake.
Yeah,
it's a facade. And so I, you know, and then he said to me one thing. He said, "Is he good with your kid?" And this is during COVID, right, 2020. He said, "Is he good with your kid?" And the guy was great with my daughter. You know, he was very good with my kid. And he's like, "What else matters? You know, what if he was like you and he was using drugs and everything? You know what I mean? And he's in the household." And I'm like, "Yeah." And you know, I'll just fast forward to they ended up breaking up, right?
And you had nothing to do with it, you promise?
No, swear. I promise. Yeah, no. Maybe I did, but not, you know, because she saw what I was doing. You know, my wife isn't an alcoholic, but she was drinking because of her depression. And so, you know, when I had like 3 years, she stopped drinking. She broke up with that boyfriend, and we started co-parenting more and more. You know, like doing things as like a pseudo family, and lo and behold, we ended up getting back together, you know. So
wow,
we've been back together 2.5 years now.
It's incredible.
We moved from New, you know, I had every intention of staying in New York. I thought she wanted to stay in New York, and one day she said she'd love to move to Florida one other time. I said, psh.
Was it a winter day, perhaps?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
We're watching the weather now. We're like, so we moved down here 2 months ago. And we're like seeing the colors change, you know, everything going on up there. She's like, thank God, you know, and so, you know, through this journey, man, we're back together, you know, so it's wild.
So, and I appreciate your journey and congratulations on everything that you've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, the bravest stuff you did was after you left the military. That's the funny thing is to swallow your pride and do the things you must to succeed. So now you work with veterans. You work with people who are coming out in the same kind of situation you are, a little beat up, a little bit broken, but substance abuse and certainly other issues going on. Did you know that you wanted to do that? When did that occur to you that you needed to help people?
Very early on. My first job when I got sober this time in Texas was working with adolescents at an adolescent treatment facility. And I have not had a job that wasn't involving, you know, substance abuse, mental health since then.
Wow. Not something you probably never would have considered years ago.
Never.
No, help
never.
people? Are you kidding me?
No, like I said, I had that moving job, and then someone said, "Hey, you should go apply at Phoenix House for, you know, an overnight position." And there's one kid, his name's Ian, that's still sober to this day, and he's traveling Europe right now. And same thing there, though, right? I know more kids that have passed away from those adolescents than have become adults like Ian. But it's like you grab onto those victories and you hold on to them with all you got, you know. And I don't know what else I would do. I mean, granted, I didn't think, you know, I make good money now, and that was never the intent. The intent was just to continue, and it sounds cliche, but to do the right thing and try and help as many people as you can. And through that, you know, people start seeing, and you start kind of gravitating towards you, you know.
You have a rare story, my friend, because you actually were able to get back what you lost.
Yeah.
Where other people get other things back, but they don't get back the stuff they
Right.
lost. That actually came back, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you filled with gratitude every day for that.
Yeah.
But you actually can see the workings of that. Of people need to change and get help, and their lives can get back on track.
But but to that point, this is like I'm very honest, right, about everything.
Yeah.
Like, I did not try. This is the first time I did not try to get my wife back.
Right.
Every time I tried to get my wife back, like we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
right back to the bottle or whatever the case may be.
Because it all becomes a manipulation and con and everything.
Yeah, and I'm very good at that. But we weren't ready.
But you were given those things back, not because you were seeking them, but because you changed.
Yeah, I think because it was, and it's meant to be. Like her, yeah, and I did. Yeah, it's 100% because I changed.
Yeah,
and that's what I try and tell people. Like, oh, so, like I don't know if you're gonna get your wife back, your kid back, right? I don't know, and I don't want to give people false hope either, which I tend to do. Like, feel like I do, and I want to be clear, like. But my wife, and she'll hear this right now. My wife could right now tell me she's not happy with me and she doesn't think it's going to work. And that will be okay. Number one, because I love her enough that I want her to be happy, which I learned when I didn't have her. And number two, because I don't need her. I don't. I want her, and we have a great, and our relationship is so much. So you say you got back what you had, what you had before, but I got it back even better.
Well, you built that. You had that period of time where you were discovering yourself, creating yourself, and creating a friendship.
Right.
Yes. And that friendship.
So
I mean, in that relationship, even the building of the relationship with your daughter, you had a chance to really excel because you had to take. This is what I got, and this is what I'm going to be grateful for, and that's good, and that's great. So you're helping people now. I want to talk because we don't have a lot of time left. We only got a few minutes.
Yeah.
You ended up working with the Haven. What do you call it?
So Haven Health Management.
Haven
for
Health
Heroes.
Management.
Haven for Heroes is
Haven for Heroes. I remember Haven Health Management, which is a treatment, addiction and mental health treatment. And Haven for Heroes is a specific program for veterans, correct?
Yes, for veterans, first responders. We have a couple throughout the country in Indiana, Arkansas, up in Massachusetts, and we just opened in New Jersey, which is where it's beautiful. I'm hoping we can really build a solid program there because it's all brand new.
Do you know where in New Jersey it is?
Yeah, Blackwood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, outside of Philly.
Yeah.
It's a really nice place, and so that's kind of where we're our focus is, as well as Florida because I'm down here.
Right.
But yeah, and it's the same thing. I think it's got all the bells and whistles, right? But it's like since I've come on, it's like what can we do, like for the pragmatic stuff, like like how can we help people find purpose? How can I've worked for a couple other places since I got sober, just working my way kind of up the ladder, and so I know a lot about what works, what doesn't work, not just for me, but for the communities that we've had, and sometimes I think, it's not a one size fits all, obviously.
No,
it
never is.
And so, our goal is just to really, we only get, you only have, us for a little while, so it's like, what's the most we can do to send you out, like, and actually be able to live a life, we don't want you, I do not want people to have to do what I did and go to treatment 12 times. And I went to great places, right? But I didn't get it. It's like, how do we get someone to get it while they're with us?
Right.
You know? It's like,
and well, that's a never-ending battle.
Yeah.
And like you said, everybody's different. The answer for Bob is not going to be the answer for Sam or for Mike or for Harry. I mean, everybody, you've got to kind of reach. But there are some specific things that you understand about before you even deal with the addiction or trauma, just the identity changing from active military to civilian life. And that is a transition that is so hard. Now, if you combine that with a mental illness, mental health issue, or an addiction, it's just so much more.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Are people starting to understand that? Because we're seeing more of these places open. Haven for Heroes been around for a little while, but it's still relatively new in the world.
Right.
Is this something people are starting to understand? These people need to be treated in a little bit different.
I think it is. And the VA saved my life on numerous occasions. So I work closely with a lot of different VAs, but I think that the biggest sticking point are the VA hospitals understanding what's going on, like the difference in the care when they can send someone to the community as to when they just, send them to the domiciliary or that type of thing. And I think that's most of my time, unfortunately, is trying to get these VAs to understand that there's a difference in the care when they're able to come to a facility like ours or other, I'm not here trying to say we're the only, good facility, but
you are one of them.
You get
certainly,
I wouldn't be there,
right.
That's point blank. And that's not negotiable in my, in my thoughts. But, I was stuck in so many VA psych wards. I was stuck in so many VA domiciliaries, homeless shelters where they said they had a program and the program was like one group, it wasn't to the extent that a lot of us private companies or organizations are able to fulfill.
The VA, we're not bad mouthing, the VA certainly, because there's a lot of great people that work in the VA who are trying to do great work.
Yeah.
But they're limited in what they can do. And there's too many areas that they're in. They're involved in so many things.
Yeah.
You can't do any one of them as well as you want to because you're trying to do too many things. So that's why these partnering with private agencies like Haven for Heroes, partnering with people like you, would make the most sense for the VA. Are they starting to see that? Or are they still trying to say, no, these are our people, we'll take care of them?
I mean, we could probably do a whole nother episode of
which
that,
we probably should. And I
yeah.
invite you to come back because we should attach.
I think it's government, right? So I think you got to talk about money comes into it, right? Budgets come into it, and politics come into it, and so, and again, that's where you get into like there has to be. We have to understand, like you're saying, there's great people that work within the VA, and then there's the VA. You know what I'm saying? And there is that's the problem.
The VA, based on the U.S. military, which is the greatest military on the planet in history, from everyone from our Coast Guard all the way up to our Marine Corps, to our Navy and Air Force, Marines, Army, the best, which means the greatest funded program in the world should be the VA system,
right?
Because they want you to go out there and put everything you have, your heart, your blood, your soul, your faith, everything goes into the Marine Corps when you're a Marine. When you walk out, they should put everything they've got into you as a human being. And we're not seeing that yet.
No.
Is it possible?
I mean, I think it is, especially, when you get into these times where, we're not involved in two different wars. And it's like now is the time where I think people were getting out at such a fast rate. They were like the VA probably had a hard time catching up. But now we're kind of at a point where it's been a couple of years since there have been any real conflicts. And so now, I mean, I don't see why they couldn't. I mean, we get into defense spending we and all this other, it's like take half of that.
We will. I ask you to come back on Veterans Voice podcast so we can talk about the VA and what works and what doesn't, and from an outside perspective. Obviously, we're not making indictments against them, but everything can improve, right? Everything can improve.
I talked to some people at the VA that are just amazing people, and they're careful with what they say because they have a career,
they have a job,
and they don't want to lose everything, but they say that our hands are tied. We want to help, but our hands are tied, and then I got to go back to a veteran that's called me and tell him, let me see what we can do when our hands are tied. They tell them it's sad, and I especially I've had to step away from the VA kind of space at times because I've been on the other side too, and it hits me from a different perspective, kind of understanding why when I did a couple times I did want to help and I wasn't able to get the help I needed. That was why. Now, most of the time, I got to be fully transparent, was my own doing. You know what I mean? I didn't want to stop. I wasn't ready to surrender. I wasn't ready to take what was offered to me. But there were times, and I think that's the thing, right? We need to strike while the iron's hot. So when someone is willing to get the help, we need to be there, we, the VA, all of us as a society, and snatch them up as soon as they can, because, that with our mental health and substance abuse, we're looking for someone to say, no, sorry, can't help you, right? Our mind is telling us, okay, good, see, you can't get any help. And the next thing you know, I got a needle in my arm or a bullet in my brain.
That's the harsh reality.
It is.
That is the harsh
You got to be able,
reality.
and you got to tell it like it is.
And John, I want to thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for Haven. Thank you to Haven for Heroes for putting the programs out there that need to be there. And we need so much more. And I know there's a handful of places that have opened veterans. Trust me, there's plenty of people. It's not like we're going to run out of people. There's too many. We'll never be able to open enough places to help everyone who needs help. But we got to keep trying. I want to ask you one last question before we go. Before I ask, certainly, can people reach you or reach the Haven to learn more about what's going on?
Definitely. I mean, you can look up Haven for Heroes. You can Haven Health Management. It'll all take you to the same website. You can call me. I mean, I'll give my phone number.
Go ahead. You put your number.
My phone number is 512-620-4038. And that's if you're a veteran and need to talk and something struck a chord with you, like call me. It doesn't have to, this isn't a sales pitch. This is like us just wanting to help. And I appreciate what you do too. And I appreciate, the trainings that you guys give. I really got a lot out of the intervention training. That's where we met.
Yes.
And I appreciate having the opportunity to speak. But yeah, 512-620-4038. I love when my phone rings,
And maybe if it's a family member who's concerned about one of their people,
yes,
maybe a son or a husband or a father who is a veteran who is suffering, they could still call you, and you'll be able to possibly steer them in the right direction, get them some help, and
at least listen. Right?
I do have to ask this: is that this is very personal for you?
Yeah,
it's very personal.
Yeah,
there's got to be times when your head hits the pillow and you say, why the hell am I doing this? Because we lose people. We lose fights a lot. When you wake up in the morning, what is the thought that keeps you going that says, I got to go out and do it again?
Yeah. My brother and my brother who lost his life to fentanyl and Zach Picking and Brandon Lay. And that I think about those guys, and there's plenty more, but those three every day. I mean, and I've been gifted a life beyond my wildest dreams, like they say, so when I wake up, it's like, I got this opportunity. They don't. Like, how the fuck could I not do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
John, retired U.S. Marine Sergeant, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing every day for our veterans and for our first responders and really anybody out there who needs help. You're extending your hand, and we appreciate that.
Great.
Thanks for being on the show,
great
my
being
friend.
here. Thank you.
For John Schrey, I'm Scott Jones. Thanking you for joining us right here on the Veterans Voice podcast. A reminder one more time, please like this show, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. And leave your comments. We want to know what you think. We'll catch you next time right here on the Veterans Voice. Bye-bye now.